Welcome to On the Money. I'm Rob Hertig, back again with Brian Quaranta. Brian, what's going on?
Rob, good to see you as always.
It is always fun to see you. We talk about really important stuff that's impactful, stuff that people need to pay attention to.
Like volatility.
Like volatility.
It's bad right now.
Well, it depends on who you're listening to.
That's
right?
true. If you're listening to some of the talking heads, they might think it's not a bad thing.
Or your financial advisor that doesn't truly understand risk and what's appropriate for people at certain stages in life, right?
You mean the ones that are being told, don't worry about it, hang in there, you're in it for the long haul, it's just a paper loss.
It'll come back.
Those emotional, those statements that are designed to control emotions.
What if somebody's financial advisor, and they did get that type of advice during the lost decade?
I saw those people get that advice. I met those people.
It's right when you got into the business.
Yes. Those people had to go back to work. Some of them had to come out of retirement because somebody got paid to convince them that it was a good idea to take risk with their money.
The funny thing is, you've told me these stories that you came into the business and you didn't put these people in those plans. You inherited clients and were past opportunities that were people that other advisors didn't want to talk to.
The first thing you learn when you get into financial history, the first thing they teach you at the big box firms is that when people are concerned about risk, you let them know not to worry about anything, that everything will be all right. They have to remember that it's a long-term investment. Well, that might make sense if you're 25 years old, 35 years old, even 45 years old. But when you start getting in that retirement red zone, volatility makes a big difference. And you better have some active management to be controlling that, because a loss can hurt you at that point in your life. And losses do hurt you more than gains help you once you get into that retirement red zone.
What was that stat you told me the other day? The worst time to retire is when?
In an up market, at the top of a bull market. If you look at the statistics, you have a higher probability of running out of money if you retire at the top of a bull market, because you have a higher probability that when you're going to start pulling money out of your accounts, that the market might be going down. And that's what's happened in the first part of 2022. So think about the people that retired at the end of 2021 or even at the end of 2020, and now they're going right into this bear market potentially, and they're pulling money out of their portfolios. And why are they pulling money out of their portfolios? Because 85% of them retiring do not have a pension.
So the funny thing is, every time we have a market downturn, at least a substantial one, we always try to come up with ways to fix the problems of the past, right? And what have we seen? We've seen 60-40 portfolios.
Right.
How's the 60-40 portfolio doing right now?
Yeah, how about the target date funds?
Right, exactly.
Right, I had, for those of you that don't know, the target date funds, they were implemented back after the 2007-2008 crisis because employees sued their employers because they had lost so much money in their 401ks. That Wall Street's answer to solving that problem, rather than giving them this big long list of investments to choose from, they said, hey, if you're going to be retiring in 2025, choose the Retirement 2025 fund. If you're going to be retiring in 2030, choose the 2030 fund. Now, I don't know about you, and I know you talk to advisors all over the country, but I've talked to people, and I had a gentleman come the other day to my office with a 2025 target date fund down almost 20%.
Wow.
Right? And this guy's 3 years out from retirement.
And this is supposed to be the foolproof way.
This is supposed to be a portfolio that gets more conservative. How about we had a client come in, or not a client, but an individual that came in, 2022 target date fund down 24%. Why? Because bonds have been hit so hard with the rising interest rates.
You look at long-term bond portfolios down anywhere from 8% to almost 20%. And these are big name bond portfolios. These aren't just obscure names that we don't know. They're the big names, and I won't say them because I don't want anybody calling my compliance department.
Listen, there's an ETF out there with a 20-year treasury that's down almost 20%. I mean, if someone told you, if you wanted to protect money, that a good place to do that would be probably a treasury bond, wouldn't you think that a 20-year treasury bond would be relatively conservative?
I mean, it blows my mind, Brian. We have to pay attention to who's giving the advice.
Yeah.
Right? Who's giving the advice? How are they being compensated?
And how risk is being quantified.
Right. And how is risk being quantified, right?
Right.
And that's a huge problem in our industry. Tell them why.
Well, because most people understand risk as conservative, moderately conservative, moderately aggressive, or even balanced, right? Those are the words that we've given to risk.
But what person can be put in those boxes?
Well, nobody can, because everybody's risk profile is different, but it's not, those terms are not actually quantifying the risk.
Right.
What does moderately conservative mean? Because I've seen people come in with moderately conservative portfolios that are down, 25%. Well, I thought that was supposed to be moderately conservative. We want to quantify risk in the form of a number, meaning I think about it like a speed limit sign, right? If you're driving at 10 miles an hour versus 70 miles an hour and you get in an accident, there's going to be a lot more damage at 70 miles an hour than they're going to be at 10 miles an hour. And that's what our risk analysis report can do. And our retirement readiness report and our risk analysis report will show people exactly how much risk they're taking, how much their portfolio could lose if the markets continue to go down, but more importantly, how to make their portfolio more efficient so that when the market does go up, they're potentially maximizing the gain on the way up also.
So it's almost a bit predatory, the way that we define risk, the way that we design products. 5-star ratings, for instance. We talked about that a little bit ago, right?
Yeah.
We talked about
the
performance.
Morningstar 5-star ratings, right? Yeah.
The 1-stars outperform the 5-stars.
Right. Why is that?
So why is it a 5-star?
Right.
But people have confidence in that, and all they know is, hey, it's got a 5-star rating, Brian.
Yeah. You ever eat at a 5-star restaurant and it really wasn't that good?
A few times.
We all have.
Yeah. Just not my type of
You
style.
know, I've eaten at a 1-star restaurant and think, why is this 1-star?
Right.
You know, because this is really good food. So, you know, how are they quantifying those star ratings? Nobody knows. There's probably some mathematical algorithm that goes into it, but it doesn't seem to make sense on a year-to-year basis when you look at returns versus reward.
It has nothing to do with performance.
That's right.
Unless you flip it on its head.
Yeah. But you know, the whole idea of the target date fund was to create an easy button, right?
Right.
And we know this, easy buttons only work during easy times.
Right.
Right? And times are pretty difficult right now.
You think about anything in life that's worth working for.
Yeah.
Where is there an easy button?
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
It does not exist.
That's right.
There's no hands off, there's no set it and forget it approach. So what does somebody do?
Yeah,
How do you know? There's so many pieces here, because we're not just talking, you know, we talked about Social Security, we talked about taxes. Right now we're talking about everything.
Yeah. So I had an uncle who had a garden, okay, and he made these beautiful gardens every year: tomatoes, squashes, cucumbers, you name it, peppers, and big plants everywhere. And he would harvest it. Well, one summer he got really, really sick, and he planted that garden. It took months for that garden to grow. Well, do you know how you harvest a garden at the end of the year, right? To get all of your fruits.
Sure.
Have you ever seen what happens to a garden when you don't harvest it?
It dies.
It just dies.
Yeah.
Your money's no different. Once it fruits, you have to harvest it, and you've got to be able to position it and protect it in ways that's going to get you through your retirement years and a way that's going to absorb volatility. Rolling the dice in the market is not a way to handle volatility. There's much better ways, and this is why I want folks to have this retirement readiness review and the risk report that we're going to put together for you. It is going to tell you, you know, what type of risk that you're taking. If the markets go down, how much more you could potentially lose. It's going to show you by making some changes. A lot of people think that when the market's down that you shouldn't sell or get out. The reality is changing things up sometimes can work to your benefit. Something called tax loss harvesting, where if you were to sell off assets right now, you could actually benefit from the volatility by having future tax write-offs on losses that you've taken. But also making changes, you know, getting rid of a losing stock for a better stock is a good thing in volatile market times. Getting on a better horse is basically essentially what you're doing when you're making a change. You're not getting out of the market and locking in the losses. You're just changing the vehicle that you're in, and that makes a big difference. And this retirement readiness review and the risk report will uncover a lot of these opportunities for you. All you have to do is call 1-888-382-1298 or scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen.
Call 888-382-1298 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report. Why take unnecessary risk when you don't have to? At 65 years old, would you drive to the grocery store at 100 miles per hour if 40 miles per hour would get you there safely? When nearing retirement, are you still driving your investment accounts like you're in your 30s or 40s? Have you changed your investment election since you first chose them in your retirement accounts at work? Call Brian and his team at 888-382-1298 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report. Do you know exactly how much risk you are taking in your investment accounts? Now that you've accumulated a nest egg for retirement, you want to be certain the risk you're taking in those investments matches your goals and objectives. Call Brian and his team, 888-382-1298 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report, or use the QR code below to begin scheduling your appointment. You may not have time to recover from taking too much risk.
Welcome to On the Money with Secure Money. I'm your host, Brian Quaranta, and I'm in studio today with my good friend, Rob Herdig. What a lot of you don't know is my good friend, Rob Herdig, here is a consultant with lots of financial planners all over the country.
Absolutely.
You have a heck of a vantage point in getting to see what's happening around the country. It's a little bit scary right now with inflation. And I've got to ask, with you working in so many different markets across the country and working with so many different planners, what is being addressed with inflation right now, and kind of what's going on?
Yeah, well, first, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me. It's always fun to sit down and talk with you. I know that you're passionate about the game here and your craft and helping people retire the way they want to retire. I know it's really important to you. From my vantage point, and man, you know me, I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm a positive guy.
Right.
I'm not a head in the sand guy. I focus on what can be achieved. And the scary thing to me is that people are putting their heads in the sand when it comes to inflation and planning for retirement, and just the whole ball of wax. It's out of sight, out of mind, and to me, that's terrifying.
Do you think they have their head in the sand right now because they've lost money, because they don't want to deal with it? What is it? Why are people not willing to address it?
I think it's a culmination of quite a few things, but you look at a 12-year bull market run.
Yeah.
That kind of lulls you to sleep a little bit, right? You
It
get
does.
this false sense of confidence. And we're talking about inflation, so let's talk about inflation. The 100-year inflation average is about 3.23%.
Yeah.
So it's been so far out of mind. The 10-year average is about 2.1. Okay.
Right.
So let's really put this into perspective from a dollar standpoint.
Yeah.
At 2.1% inflation, if you need $100,000 a year in retirement, it takes 30 years for that to double to.
So you're telling me if I need $30,000 right now, in 30 years I'd need $60,000 at 2% inflation.
Right.
Okay, got it.
At 3%, 3.2% inflation, which is the 102-year average, it's about every 25 years. So out of sight, out of mind. And here's why. How long does the average person live in retirement?
Well, first off, most people can't think about they can't think past what they're going to have for dinner tonight, let alone 25 years that they're going to need extra income.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. The average person lives 18 to 20 years in retirement right now. So it's not even going to double the whole time they're in retirement at 2.3, right, or 2.2, whatever it is. Now, we ran it also at 8.6, which was the national average, okay?
Right now.
Well, it's not anymore. It's 9.1 now. So we ran this a little bit
So it's getting
low.
worse.
Well, so I dumbed it down a little bit just because I don't want to do worst case scenario. I try to be realistic about this stuff, but I do think it's worse than 8.6%. And when we run it at 8.6%, your income need doubles every 8 years. So that's about 3 times in retirement. So if you need $100,000 a year now, it becomes $200 by year 8, and by year 16, it is $400,000 a year. Where's that coming from?
Well, and most people will spend 20 to 30 years in retirement. So this is a lot of doubling that could happen if inflation stayed at this. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier this morning, where everybody's inflation rate's a little bit different too.
It is.
I mean, I have clients that enjoy just staying home taking care of their garden. Right. They watch their grandkids.
Yeah.
But then I have clients that are flying around the country, flying around the world, going on cruises, going out to dinner, spending time out with their grandkids.
Right.
Their grandkids are in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Right. Their inflation rate
is higher.
Has got to be different because travel's up what, 40%?
35 to 40%, kind of depending on who you're talking to.
Then fuel is up.
Oh, 100%.
100% up fuel.
I mean, it's insane.
So somebody that's very active in retirement could have a completely different inflation rate than the average.
I think you make a great point, because what do you say about returns? You said the market doesn't return in what? In averages,
That's
right?
That's
so when we're talking about returns, it doesn't return in averages. It means it's not going to hit everybody equally, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going to hit the same way all the time, right?
Yep.
Well, why do we look at inflation in averages? Because if you have a different lifestyle than somebody else, I would venture to guess inflation is a much higher rate for you.
Yeah, and you make a good point about averages, and this is where the math lies. Wall Street math lies. You know, folks, if you don't realize this, but not inflation, but just if you look at math in general, let's say you had $1 million and you lost, let's say 50%, and you go to 500,000. The next year you gain 50%. You're only going back to 750,000. That's still a 25% loss. Let's say the next year after that you gain an additional 30%. You're not even back to even yet. So you have a 3-year return of 0. But if you look at the averages, Wall Street will tell you you still averaged a reasonable rate of return of about 10%, right?
Isn't that insane?
Isn't that insane?
It's crazy.
That's amazing to me that they are able to do that and project those numbers like that.
You want to look at a little more math?
Go ahead.
Okay, look at your 100-year average, right?
Yeah.
3.2%,
Right.
3.23. Okay, sustainable, right?
Yep.
3.2. Because what's the 70-year average return of the S&P? About 9,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So if we take the 3.2% inflation and we factor in the systematic withdrawal approach, right? Where we're taking the 4% rule. It's also called the 4% rule. We're taking an additional 4% withdrawals out per year to live off of, right? What do we have a total of? 7% per year?
Yeah.
That's sustainable, okay? Now back out that 3.4% average rate of return.
Yeah.
Or average inflation rate.
Right.
And plug back in that 8.6.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay?
we've got a problem.
We've got a problem.
Right.
And nobody's talking about it, and firms aren't talking about it. How many people do you come in and say, hey, yeah, my big box firm, they called me and told me I should come in and talk to them because of inflation and because of inflation's impact on my plan. How many of those do you have?
We don't see it.
It never
They're
happens.
not getting those phone calls.
Here's what I don't understand.
And
Brian.
most of these big box firms have figured out plans around 3 or 4% inflation, and they're not reviewing it.
Right.
And of course, when people are losing money, all they're doing is telling them, don't worry about it, hang in there, you're in it for the long haul, it's just a paper loss. And I think the big box firms really are disconnected from what's really happening in retirement because they focus on an investment strategy, right? That's designed to accumulate and grow the money.
Yeah.
But what retirees need is actually a distribution of income.
They do.
Right? It's about you climb the mountain, but then how are you going to get down the mountain?
Right.
And you need a guide to get down the mountain. And this is what Secure Money Advisors has always been really good at and what we're passionate about. But there's not many of us out there. You work with some of the best advisors across the country that focus solely on distribution.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's a different strategy than actually growing the money.
It's a different area of expertise.
Building income, protecting yourself from inflation,
Right.
making sure that your lifestyle is protected is different than just growing a pot of money because you have time.
Right.
And when in retirement, you don't have time.
So you think about what we asked a little bit ago. Why are these other firms not talking about it? Either they don't do it, right? Or they're worried about losing income, right? Because they get paid. The more money you have with them under management, the more they get paid. So they don't want that leaving going into other instruments that are going to help you survive retirement.
You mean like if they take money out of managed accounts and go into something that generates cash flow,
Yeah, exactly.
they could cannibalize their fees? Is that what
That's
you mean?
exactly. They don't want to take a pay cut.
So, right. Isn't that fascinating to me?
It's interesting.
Well, it is interesting because that's not helping people from a consultative standpoint solve problems. Folks, we're talking about inflation, and there's a few ways that you can solve this problem. You could get a part-time job, you could go back to work, but the better thing to do is actually get a review and stress test your portfolio for inflation. If you call right now, call 1-888-382-1298. Our team is standing by to schedule you for a complimentary retirement readiness review and inflation report. Take advantage of this right now. This is not the time to kick the can down the road and procrastinate. Again, call 1-888-382-1298 and schedule your complimentary retirement readiness review and get your inflation report today, or scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen and schedule. Thanks for watching.
Call 888-382-1298 for your retirement readiness review with inflation report. Inflation continues to hit all-time highs. Will your investments provide you with income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings? Don't let runaway inflation erode your retirement dreams. Now's the time to act to be certain you have an income strategy that overcomes the effects of inflation. Call Brian and his team at 888-382-1298 for your no-cost retirement readiness review with inflation report. You might have the savings you need today to weather this storm, but how will inflation affect your nest eggs 5, 10, 15 years from now? Discover the peace of mind you deserve. Call Brian and his team, 888-382-1298 for your no-cost retirement readiness review with inflation report, or use the QR code to schedule your appointment today.
Welcome to On the Money with Secure Money. I'm your host, Brian Quaranta, and in studio with me today is my good friend, Rob Herdig, and consultant of many, hundreds of financial planners all over the country. And it's really neat to have you in with us because you give us a perspective that we don't really get all that often. You get to see kind of what's going on everywhere in the country and how financial planning firms are really going about solving some of the most major problems. And one of the most major problems we're dealing with is taxation.
Yeah.
So when it comes to taxes, why do you think most people just don't have a tax plan? What's going on?
Well, I think we've been conditioned to look at taxes in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Look at how we file our tax returns on our income, right? We're doing it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
We're making we call it preparations. Aren't preparations like a tax prepare?
Yeah.
Preparations for something you're getting ready to do, not something you already did, right?
Right.
So it's funny, we've been conditioned to look at things backwards, right? And so when we go into retirement, we look at taxation on our assets. We look at it from a completely different lens than we do with any other thing in life. Think about this. When you went to college, right, you had a plan to get through your schooling,
That's right.
And once you accomplished that goal, you had other goals, right? And there was a plan of action. Why is it with taxes we wing it?
Or we look backwards.
Right.
We're looking backwards, right? We're saying what's happened over the last year and let's prepare that return rather than saying, hey, what's going to be happening?
Yeah.
And how do we prepare and how do we avoid those obstacles that are about to come because they're coming?
So here's the interesting thing. There's a quote I think that expresses this perfectly. There was a federal judge, his name was Learned Hand.
Okay.
And he essentially said in America there are two tax systems, one for the informed, the other's for the uninformed,
Yeah.
and both are legal. And you know what they're counting on?
Yeah,
They're
the
counting on the
uninformed.
uninformed.
That's right. Yeah.
So who are you going to be?
Yeah.
Who are you gonna
Most
be?
people are the uninformed.
And they don't have to be. But and it's not that they're not smart people,
Yeah.
Brian. It's not that they're dumb.
Right.
It's that they've been conditioned to believe that this is the way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, or they're getting advice from the wrong people.
Right.
Right, and most people don't realize that most people that we meet, their
Yeah.
largest asset is some type of retirement plan like a 401k, a 403b, an IRA account.
Right.
These accounts have never been taxed before.
But they look at it like they have been, right?
Right, and what they don't realize is that their largest shareholder in those accounts is the IRS.
You got a business partner.
You have a business partner, and imagine having a business partner that at any day they could wake up and say, you know what, I don't feel like just getting 30% of your money anymore. I want 40% or 50%
Right.
or 60% of your money. And they can change the rules in the middle of the game.
Right.
Now, listen, I have a 3-year-old. He's just learning how to start playing games. But if I change the rules on Maddox
Yeah.
in the middle of the game, he's like, Dad, that's not fair.
Right.
But
Right.
yet we deal with this with the government all the time with the tax code.
He would call you out. Nobody in their right mind would play this game, but we do every single day.
Yeah.
It's a matter of being proactive versus being reactive, right?
Yeah.
There's a way to be proactive, but a lot of times, you know, we talked about what I do for a living on the intro, and you know, it's really cool to see, but it's also really terrifying to see too, because I'm part of this experiment, right, where I get to see all these people coming in because their advisors not doing what they're
Right.
supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And to hear these stories and to see where people are at, and they're putting blind faith and blind trust in somebody that may or may not have their best intentions in mind, right?
Yeah, and they're going in and they're having reviews about account performance. They're not having reviews around the best ways to maximize their income, the best ways to reduce their taxation
Right.
or their future taxation. They're not talking about how to properly bucket their investments, right?
Right.
You look at most people, they have investments all in one bucket.
Right.
And they have not taken the time to designate certain buckets of money at certain times of their life to do certain things. They don't have a healthcare strategy. They don't have a legacy strategy.
Right.
Because these big firms are not doing this type of in-depth planning, and there's a lot that's being missed. Not every I is being dotted and not every T is being crossed.
Right. So we know there's some ways to mitigate taxes. There's
Right.
stuff like there's life insurance. There's also something called a Roth conversion,
Right.
where essentially you fulfill the taxation on it today, and the what you earn on it from then on out becomes tax-free, right?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand this whole Roth IRA thing.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Big box firms do not talk about it. And I challenge anybody out there right now, call your big box firm,
Yeah.
ask them about Roth conversions, and I know the answer. They either don't do them or they don't talk about them. You know
Yeah.
why they don't talk about them?
Why?
Because when you do a Roth conversion, it takes you satisfying the taxation on that account. So that a lot of times the account size shrinks. So the financial advisor's taking a loss in income.
So you're telling me, let's say you have $1 million account,
Yeah.
right? And let's just say that you're going to convert that $1 million account,
Right.
but you got to pay the taxes on it, right?
Right.
So now that $1 million account's only worth $700,000 because
Yes.
you had to pay 30% in taxes, or maybe less, right?
Right.
So now they can only charge fees on $700,000, not $1 million.
Right.
Wow.
So if you think if they're charging 1%, right?
Right.
Their income went from, what is that?
Well, $10,000 down to $7,000.
They took a 30% reduction in pay. So they
Yeah.
were worried about their pay and not yours, right?
Wow, that's incredible, because the best thing you can do is really get rid of that, get rid of the IRS as quickly as you can, because you're either going to deal with them in your lifetime, or whoever you leave your money to, they're going to deal with them.
Do you remember what Albert Einstein said about compounding interest?
Wasn't it like the eighth wonder of the world?
It's the eighth wonder of the world, and the IRS knows that. That's why they're allowing you to defer your taxes, right? So you can disinherit them right now,
Yep.
and use that compounding in your favor.
Yeah.
Or you can let them win. I mean,
Right, because I still get compounding interest when I do a conversion to a Roth IRA.
Right.
It's just the compounding of it is actually all tax-free to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I get asked this question all the time, like, how do I know? How do I know if I'm a good candidate for Roth conversions? And I think a lot of people hear that and they say, oh, it doesn't apply to me. But I think I know what I would identify as a candidate, but you in your practice, what you see is, hey, this person is a prime candidate to actually do some strategic tax planning.
Well, look, if you're 10 years from retirement, 5 years from retirement, you have money in an IRA, a 401k, you're a perfect candidate
Yeah.
to look add a Roth conversion strategy to see if it would benefit you to do.
Even if you're recently retired, probably. If you're not too far
Even
into it.
recently retired, you can do it. Because look at it this way. Most people, right, with their retirement account, that is replacing the defined benefit plan, right? The pension.
Yeah.
So most people, 85 to 90% of the people that have these plans are going to need to take income out. So let's just do some basic math. Let's say they need $1,000 coming out of that account, and they're in a 20% tax bracket. Well, that means after they take that $1,000 out and pay the 20% in taxes, they're only netting $800.
Right.
Well, what happens when taxes go to 30%? Now they're only netting $700. So just through taxes going up, they reduce their purchasing power.
Right.
Now you convert that to a Roth IRA, right? And now you take that same $1,000 out, your taxes are at 20%. You pull that money out of a Roth IRA, you still get $1,000 because you don't owe any taxes. Tax rates go to 50%, you still get $1,000 because it's all tax-free money. And now, to your point, that compounding interest is working in your favor. Folks, the reason why you want to get a tax strategy right now is because we have the most advantageous tax rates right now. Now is the time to actually put together a tax plan. Why taxes are on sale. But you got to do your part. You got to call us today. Call 1-888-382-1298 and get your retirement readiness review with tax map report. Again, call 1-888-382-1298 or scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for watching.
Call 888-382-1298 now to receive your complimentary tax map with your retirement readiness review. Learn multiple strategies that can protect you from higher taxes now and in the future. Taxes are a threat to your financial stability in retirement. Protect yourself from the potential threat of rising taxes. As a retirement planning financial advisory firm, Brian and his team will help you navigate the financial waters to pursue your retirement goals. Call 888-382-1298 today. Brian and his team provide inclusive retirement services such as investment directives for your portfolio, income producing strategies, and wealth preservation plans for your family and legacy. Call Brian and his team, 888-382-1298 now for your complimentary tax map with your retirement readiness review. Discover tax strategies to keep more of what you have saved in retirement, or use the QR code below to schedule today.